Hello, hello, friends, and welcome to today's live level up conversation. We've got some really fun things to discuss, and happy Tuesday to you. Let's go ahead and dive right into today's live level up discussion.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun. Award-winning financial pro. Get ready. Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Well, welcome, friends. I'm Winnie, your host, an award winning financial pro, a Forbes contributor, and a CNBC council member and contributor. And we are streaming here live on many different social media platforms. So definitely jump in, introduce yourself, let me know how you're doing. Of course, it is a new week. What's going on? And the market's all kind of crazy today. But if you didn't know, the Dow is currently up 141 points, which of course is great. But the Nasdaq is down 202 points currently, and the S&P 500 is down about 27 points as well. So a lot of things happening, of course. And one of the big themes of the week, and of course continuing from last week, is all about technology, right? So the S&P 500, Nasdaq are definitely be feeling some pressure because some of the drops in the major tech names that you're very familiar with. But this week is really critical because we've got a lot of tech earnings coming out, but despite earnings season overall, a lot of tech names are just under pressure due to a lot of the high expectations and, of course, concerns about some cooling in terms of the AI space and spending and money and all that stuff. And of course, the Fed's policy meeting is also occurring currently, and we're also hoping that there's a clear signal of potential kind of almost there rate cuts. And of course, the hoping, everybody's hoping and thinking, and I think some of this priced in as well, of a potential rate reduction in interest rates come later in this year in about September. But, you know, other companies are still doing well. We saw some names in travel do well today. We're seeing some surprises in the grocery chain area. But overall, everybody's sort of on pause, waiting to hear more good information. And let me just, I mean, let's be honest, people are also, it's the summertime, and so people are also focused on other things as well. So currently, that's what the market is. Not great. The market hasn't closed yet, so let's hope that it improves a little bit before the end of the day. But let's jump into some news. And there's some big news coming out. And one of these is a big actual check being written because Meta, the parent company of Facebook, as you know, is settling for $1.4 billion in this biometric data lawsuit that's occurring with Texas. In fact, this is being shared by Dan Mangan on CNBC, talking about how Meta has now agreed to pay this to settle this biometric data lawsuit. And so the lawsuit accused Meta of using users' biometric data without consent. And this is coming from uploaded Facebook photos and videos. And so this issue did stem from Facebook's tag suggestions. Now, if you remember this, I know when it first came out, it was a little like we weren't sure what to make of it, but it became easier to find certain people that you were looking for. So they use all this information. And this was featured and introduced in 2011, which stored biometric identifiers whenever you posted photos or videos. But there are legal requirements to this, and Texas law requires that companies have to inform and, of course, obtain consent before they're allowed to collect biometric data, which, no surprise here, Meta did not do. So, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton initiated this lawsuit back in 2022, in February of 2022. And they also are pursuing a similar case against Google's parent company, Alphabet. So, this settlement is now the largest ever obtained by a single state for violations such as this. And Meta has said that they are satisfied with the resolution, and they indicate plans to just explore further business investments in Texas. They want to move on, make friends, leave on a friendly stance, I guess. So this case just shows the sort of the growing legal and regulatory scrutiny that companies have to face using biometric data by tech companies. So yeah, I can only imagine this is going to get bigger with AI, right? So it'll be interesting to see what companies need to do, how much they need to pay, and what rights we have to sign over for them to use this type of technology. So, speaking of all things technology, speaking of things that are sort of exciting, let's segue over to something else. And I don't know about you, but this is something that we have been loving following, and this is the Paris Olympics. You didn't think I was going to segue over to Olympics, did you? But yes, indeed, I was. So CNBC's Sarah Fisher is talking about how the opening ceremony, if you haven't seen this yet for the Olympics, you definitely should check it out, has drawn record viewership, which of course translates into more money. The Paris Olympics opening ceremony has attracted nearly 29 whopping million viewers, which is the highest since 2012 London Games. Now, previous Olympics, of course, dealt with lower viewership. They said partly due to, of course, the beginning of the pandemic. In fact, Tokyo in 2021 had 17.9 million viewers, which was the lowest in 33 years. And the Beijing Winter 2022 Olympics also saw significant declines as well. But the Paris event is back, and it was the most watched live event on NBCU's Peacock, which drew 28.6 million viewers across their different platforms like Peacock and NBC, and another like 666,000 and on their Telemundo um, platforms as well. So really huge numbers, which this of course translates into big money. So NBC, of course, has invested over $7.6 billion for the media rights through 2032. And of course, they're under pressure to secure those high ratings. So I'm sure they're pretty pleased about this. The network has already generated over $1.2 billion in advertising for the Paris Games alone. And so brand advertising during the Paris opening ceremony saw a 320% increase in search volume compared to in Tokyo. So, yes, viewership for the Olympics is absolutely back. So, for those of you who have been watching Olympics, I know many of you have. Tell me, were there any surprises? And if not, what is a sport or athlete that you're most excited to watch during this Olympic Games? I want to hear from you. I want to know because we know the Olympics are back, and this is started in, just this week on July 26th. It's going to actually continue all the way to August, so August 11th. So definitely lots to watch. And if you have Peacock, then you can probably do what I'm doing, which is catch the Olympics when you can and just watch on replay, which much more convenient. But this just goes to show you the rebound on the Olympics and for those in Paris. I gotta tell you, I haven't seen this yet, but I'm curious to see how many of you have. How many of you have seen the opening show for the Olympics? I heard the opening ceremonies had a really interesting character, a blue character. I haven't seen that yet, but I want to know if you have uh, yet as well. I see Vicky Garvey joining us on Facebook Live. Thank you so much, Vicky, for being here. Let me know. Let me know what you thought about that. And of course, Cross X Fighter, thank you so much for being on YouTube Live. Have you seen the Olympics? And yes, happy Tuesday to you. It's great to see you as well. I want to know what you think about this because the Olympics is is exciting to me because I see all these athletes from all these different countries, but I also love how we're all coming together, right, on one event, on one world platform, and you see the beautiful uniforms that they're wearing, and you're seeing these really inspiring athletes and the things that they're able to do, almost superhuman abilities, right? It's pretty exciting. Anyhow, so the hosting the Olympics has, of course, become financially great for some platforms such as NBC. But do you know that it actually can be quite harmful sometimes financially to the cities or the countries that host it as well? So, this is actually a report that came out from the economics of hosting the Olympic Games, a report done by the Council on Foreign Relations, evaluating sort of the financial impact of hosting the Olympic Games. This was something written by the Foreign Affairs by James McBride and team, and just talking about how it just gets so much more expensive now to host something like the Olympics. And sort of the financial advantages are really sort of unknown. If you compare that to like Taylor Swift coming to a city or Beyonce, they're saying, the cost reward is somewhat different. So Paris 2024, of course, their plan is to demonstrate improved economic visibility, and that it makes sense. So since the 1970s, the cost of hosting have ballooned. You probably knew this. In fact, by in Montreal, I guess in 1976, they had massive debt. I wasn't there at that time. I'm sure many of you weren't there at the time, but the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics is a rare case of profitability here in California due to the reliance on existing infrastructure. So they didn't have to build as much to host the Olympics. So that ended up being good for LA. But they said typically cities have to invest so much money in sports facilities and in general infrastructure and, of course, security to be able to pull off the Olympics. And these expenses typically far exceed the initial estimates. It definitely was the case for Paris, which leads to long term financial burdens for many of the cities that host this. In fact, many Olympic venues actually then become underutilized after the games, which requires ongoing maintenance, repairs, and of course, vacant property, especially now, since we just came out of the beginning of the pandemic, right? There's still, we know, a lot of commercial space that's sitting empty. So examples include Beijing's, what they built is Bird's Nest Stadium, and Athens actually abandoned their facilities, which just contributed to more financial stresses for just different places that host the Olympic Games. So economists are now advocating for reforms in the Olympic bidding process to help reduce wasteful spending and, of course, increase transparency. The IOC has introduced new measures. I'm thinking they're probably going to want to try to find places that have a lot of this existing infrastructure, or even places that have recently hosted and invested so much money to building these places. It might just have to be smarter and being more cautious about utility and about expenses and waste and all those things. But then, I know many countries want to host. And so, how do you make it so that everybody still has a fair shot? I mean, are you going to be able to move these venues from one country to another? That doesn't seem reasonable. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But Paris, of course, plans to mitigate costs by utilizing these existing venues and, of course, spreading events across multiple cities. And so hopefully that'll work. Hopefully they will bring in someone like Taylor Swift to use these venues instead, right? So they can still make money off them. I don't know. Just a thought. So some economists are, of course, proposing designating a permanent host city to avoid repetitive infrastructure costs and to ensure long term economic planning. I don't know how countries would feel about that. I feel like then everybody would want to be that permanent location. But yeah. All right. Well, speaking of all things sustainable and speaking of more things of costing a lot of money, we need to talk about student loans. Now, there was a report that just came out on CNBC by my friend Annie Nova talking about there's now over 1 million people now owe more than $200,000 in federal student loans. That's crazy. This is a huge surge in student loan debt. And this is a big deal. Just when you thought that things were getting better, right? That people identify the problem with student loans, and you see the Biden administration really trying to make progress here by waiving student debts and decreasing, making things more affordable, making the payment stream more accessible. And yet now we're reaching yet another high level of student debt. Crazy. As of the second quarter of 2024, 2.4 million borrowers now owe between 100 to $200,000. That's up from 1.8 million in 2017. So students continue to borrow, continue to owe more, and the interest continues to ratchet up. And therefore, it's now at a staggering 1 million people um, have debt that exceeds $200,000. Just think about that for a minute. That's so many people owning so much money. And then how are they even going to get ahead to be able to pay that off, to be able to afford rent, afford groceries, afford, medical needs? it's crazy. And the price of shelter is just getting higher too. Yeah. So, yeah, Vicky is saying, what a shame. Education should be free to all. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, it's crazy. I think there we need to do a deep dive to understand where all these costs are going, and does it make sense? Because you could argue for the fact that, of course, quality education comes at a cost, right? Professors come at a cost, and that's understandable. But then there are certain education campuses that's starting to look like the Taj Mahal. And I guess from a financial person's perspective, I'm wondering if there is a way to make this more reasonable. And I gotta think that there is. There's gotta be costs in there, waste in there, that if we did a deep dive, we could do cuts and we could figure out how to get the cost of education down. So the primary current driver, of course, the rise in large debt is, of course, the rise of education and the total annual in some institutions, including tuition, fees, room and board. Some can actually get close to $100,000 a year, which is crazy. And graduate students, even higher education, face the highest debts due to, unfortunately, the borrowing limits for their programs, unlike undergraduate students. So this policy enables schools to set higher prices for graduate programs without having to worry about whether it's affordable. Over 10% of graduate and professional students currently owe more than $100,000. And think about your dentists. Dental graduates on average owe around $307,000. And vets, those who take care of your fur babies, your pets, they on average owe approximately $170,000. So talk about a lot of money. Now parents can also take on unlimited debt through this Parent Plus loans. So they're owing money too. A lot of parents are actually having to dip into their retirement savings to try to mitigate some of that stress on their students. But we, I mean, based on these numbers, I think we would all agree that student loan debt is out of control here in the United States. The question is, what do you do? I have a whole bunch of resources I'm working on to answer that question. But nonetheless, that's where we're at. And I just want to keep that thought in your mind of just how big this problem is in the United States. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know, like, if you have any ideas or concerns or thoughts on any of the topics that we discussed today, or there's something else that hit your radar that you thought, Winnie should take a look at this because this is really interesting. Based on, I think this is something that she might want to share on the show. Definitely send me a message, direct message, or just you know send me a tweet or whatever post and at Winnie Sun, and that way I can see it. So thank you so much, my friends, for being a part of today's level up. Currently, the Dow is up 102 points. The Nasdaq is still, unfortunately, down over 200 points, down 217 points, and the S&P 500 is currently down 34 points as well. Market hasn't closed yet. We still have a little bit more than an hour to go, but I think that overall it's probably not going to turn around anytime soon. But nonetheless, we've got more news saved up for you this week. So I look forward to coming back and regrouping with all of you. And of course, thank you so much for sharing this show on social media. And if you do so, make sure to tag at Winnie Sun so I can see your share. So thank you so much for Joshua and so many of others who have done that. Do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on all the latest content that we have coming up. And of course, if you want to watch previous full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun, you can definitely check out NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, Samsung, LG, Roku, and many other streaming platforms. And you can always see like the latest and greatest Level Up episodes by just searching for Winnie Sun on wherever you're watching today, and you'll see we try to keep everything nice and fresh for you. And of course, when sharing the episode, definitely tag at Winnie Sun and check out Yes Factor with Winnie Sun on Apple Podcasts. If you're doing a road trip, it's great listening. So thank you so much, my friends, for being here. I hope you have a beautiful day, a beautiful week. I'll see you again this week. Take care. Be well. Bye bye now.